Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our closed session. Mayor Showalter, do you have an announcement to make?
Yes, just a second. Let me open it up. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, I am participating in this meeting remotely through both audio and visual technology under the Just Cause provision due to travel while on official business of the legislative body. No other people are present at this remote location with me. Thank you.
Thank you. And Vice Mayor, do you have an announcement to make?
I do. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, I am participating in this meeting remotely through both audio and visual technology under the Just Cause provision due to travel while on official business of the legislative body. No other persons over 18 years of age are present at this remote location with me. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Ramos, do you have an announcement?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Hicks. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, I am participating in this meeting remotely through both audio and visual technology under the Just Cause provision due to travel while on official business of the legislative body. No other person over 18 years of age is present at this remote location with me. Thank you.
And thank you. As a reminder, all votes during this meeting will be taken by roll call. City Attorney Logue will make a closed session announcement, and then we will welcome public comment on the item listed for closed session. City Attorney Logue?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. There is one item on this evening's closed session agenda. Item 2.1 is a conference with legal counsel regarding 2 items of anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we reserve time for any member of the public joining us virtually or in person to provide comments on the closed session item. I actually see 0 attendees, so I'm assuming nobody wants to make comments, either virtually or in person. So, with that, the council, we're on item number 2, which is closed session, and the council will now recess to the Plaza Conference Room for closed session and return to the council chambers at the close to continue to the regular session of the council meeting. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Mountain View City Council of November 12th, 2024. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The city clerk, we are on item number 3 on your agenda, and the city clerk will take attendance by roll call.
Councilmember Abe Koga. Here. Councilmember Hicks.
Here.
Councilmember Kamei.
Here.
Councilmember Ramirez.
Here.
Councilmember Ramos.
Here.
Vice Mayor Matichak.
Here.
Mayor Showalter.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We're now on item number 4, which is the consent calendar. These items will be approved by one motion unless any member of the council wishes to pull an item for individual consideration. If an item is pulled from the consent calendar, it will be considered separately following approval of the balance of the calendar. If you'd like to speak on these items or the next item, oral communications on non-agenda items in person, please submit a blue speaker card to the city clerk now. Would any member of the council like to pull an item? Okay, I don't see anyone. Would any member of the public joining us virtually or in person like to provide comment on these items? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or submit a blue speaker card to the city clerk. So, are there any in-person speakers? I don't see any virtual speakers either. So in that case, I'll bring the item back for council action and note that a motion to approve the consent calendar should also include reading the title of the ordinance and resolution attached to consent calendar items 4.2 and 4.4. And the city clerk will be taking a roll call vote as we have council members participating remotely this evening. So I have a motion by Councilmember Abe Koga and a second by Councilmember Kamei. Councilmember Abe Koga?
Thank you, Mayor, or Councilmember Hicks. I would like to make the motion that includes item 4.2, adopt an ordinance of the City of Mountain View adopting required findings, amending Chapter 8 buildings of the Mountain View City Code to adopt local amendments to the 2022 editions of the California Green Building Standards Code and the California Plumbing Code to add electrical pre-wiring requirements and to make clarifying changes to recycled water requirements, and finding the amendments to be exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15061, B3 and 15308, to be read in title only, further reading waived. And item 4.4, adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View, 1, approving an amended Community Health Awareness Council, CHAC, Joint Powers Agreement, 2, authorizing the city manager to execute the amended CHAC Joint Powers Agreement, and 3, authorizing the city manager to provide written consent to the CHAC Joint Powers Authority, JPA Board, to dissolve the CHAC JPA once the city receives written notice from the CHAC JPA Board that windup of CHAC's business affairs has concluded, to be read in title only, further reading waived.
Thank you. And now the city clerk will take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Abe Koga.
Aye.
Councilmember Kamei.
Yes.
Councilmember Hicks.
Yes.
Councilmember Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilmember Ramos.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matichak.
Yes.
Mayor Showalter.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. So now we're moving on to item 5, which is oral communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic within the City Council's subject matter jurisdiction for up to 3 minutes during this section. State law prohibits the council from acting on non-agenda items. If you'd like to speak on this item or the next item in person, please submit a blue speaker card to the city clerk now. And I do see that we have a speaker, Maria Marroquin.
Yeah, good afternoon, City Council members. Hey, Mayor. Good afternoon. So I come today to invite you to celebrate with us our 28 years of service. So this is a great opportunity when community can come together and celebrate this big milestone. The theme for this year is Thriving Together. And I believe it's really appropriate to emphasize that words together. And this is our vision for the future and for our dear Mountain View. Continue thriving together in this environment and this great opportunity that we foresee with even between our difference, we can achieve great things if we come with a good faith and open hearts, and hopefully you take this opportunity to celebrate. I want to share a little thing that happened that made me cry just lately, and that is not easy, by the way. But there is a volunteer named Jack. He has a nonprofit organization named Pro Bono Photography. And he, every year, used to support us taking pictures for our event. So this year, he was just saying that wasn't possible for him because he needs to rehearse for a choir in his church. But something that he changed his mind. And he said, in these times, it's very important for me to reevaluate my priorities and values. Therefore, he will be with us. So I think this is like a very strong signal that we can continue thriving together. So this is my message for you today, and I hope to see you there. Thank you again.
And are you going to tell us when it is?
That's a great idea.
And where?
It's November 14 and the Garden House, 6 to 8 in Los Altos. Thank you.
Thank you. So it looks like we have no other in-person speakers. I'll move to virtual speakers. We have Bruce England.
Thank you. Bruce England, Wisman Station Drive here in Mountain View. I don't have a prepared comment, but we all know that an election just took place, and we're going to have a new president starting next year. And one of the strong statements that has been made coming from him is that he plans to do mass deportation of people across the country. And that might be one of the first things that he does. He's talking about day one. Mountain View has been very strong in protecting everybody within our community, including people who have come from other locations in other countries. And I want us to continue this, but I think we're going to have to be very strong. I think we're going to have to strengthen what we're doing already. And my understanding is that Mountain View had an event in 2017, 2018, an information sharing event to let people know throughout the community what they can and should do to help protect people throughout our community. So my ask is that and I can research it, but find out who organized that event when it took place back then and redo it and have it happen again. Some people, employers and so on in the community know what their employees' rights are, but not everybody. And it's going to be important that if authorities show up at a work site and start taking action, that employers and others on site know what to do. I'm not sure that we all really know what our rights are. And also, we have rights that are protected in Mountain View, but ideally those rights would also be protected at higher levels as well, at the county level, at the state level. And so that gives you, City Council, an opportunity for legislative priority setting around this with the county and the state. And I hope that you'll seriously consider that. I know you can't take action on this right now, but I hope you'll take what I've just said seriously and consider agendizing a further discussion on this. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I do not see any other public speakers. So I'll now move on to, let's see. I'll now move on to item number 6. First, we have 6.1, residential development project at 2645, 2655 Fayette Drive. Builder's remedy. Oh, but this item will not be heard. It was renoticed for November 19th. So we move on to item 6.2, which is eliminate minimum parking standards for residential uses in Article 10. I won't read the whole title. You can read that on your agenda. Principal Planner Diana Pancioli will present the item. And if you'd like to speak on this item in person, please submit a blue speaker card to the city clerk now.
Well, good evening, council members and the members of the public. My name is Diana Pancioli, Principal Planner with the city's Planning Division. And I'm joined here tonight by Assistant Community Development Director, Amber Blazinski, and Project Planner, Hang Zhou. The item in front of you tonight is to consider amendments to the Mountain View City Code and a few specific precise plans to eliminate minimum parking requirements for residential uses. For background, since January of 2023, Assembly Bill 2097 eliminated minimum parking requirements for most development projects within half mile of major transit stop. The state law allows developers to set their own parking needs based on specific conditions rather than following the city's minimum parking standards. However, AB 2097 still allows the cities to require minimum parking spaces for electric vehicles and disabled persons. In the city of Mountain View, there are 6 major transit stops, including 4 light rail stations and 2 Caltrain stations. The areas within a half mile of these stops are highlighted in blue on the map on your screen right now. Later in April of 2023, the City Council adopted the 6-cycle housing element, which covers the 2023-2031 planning period. As part of this housing element, Program 1.2 was introduced to eliminate minimum parking standards in certain cases. This program includes 3 subtasks. Subtask A required eliminating the minimum parking requirement for 100% affordable housing developments. This was completed as part of the zoning code update in December of last year. Subtask B calls for codifying exemptions to parking requirements for residential developments in El Camino Real, San Antonio, Downtown, and East Wisman precise plans, as well as in the Moffett Boulevard General Plan Change area. This subtask is due by December 31st of 2024 and is the item presented to you tonight. Subtask C requires codifying exemptions to parking standards for projects that meet Enhanced Transportation Demand Management TDM criteria with a due date of December 31st, 2026. This will be addressed as part of the citywide TDM ordinance currently being developed and has an anticipated adoption timeline of fall 2025. This program aims to provide greater flexibility in land use and site design, facilitating the development of, Housing Element Program 1.2 went above and beyond AB 2097. It further eliminates the minimum parking requirements for all residential developments and any residential components in mixed-use projects in Chapter 36 zoning of the City Code, as well as 4 precise plan areas as highlighted in yellow here. In the precise plan areas covered by AB 2097, this means that although no minimum parking is required, electric vehicle parking and parking for disabled persons are only required if a developer chooses to include parking voluntarily and is calculated based on parking being provided instead of parking being required per the Building Reach Code. In the precise plan areas not covered by AB 2097, the proposed amendments will align residential parking requirements with those inside AB 2097. However, It is worth noting that the current minimum parking requirements for non-residential developments will remain in effect in the areas highlighted in red on the map here. In line with the proposed amendments, there are other minor amendments which are being proposed for internal consistency. This includes removing parking reduction option for multifamily residential development in El Camino Real Precise Plan and San Antonio Precise Plan. Removing car share vehicle requirements for multifamily residential developments in East Wisman Precise Plan. And finally, making it clearer that if parking is not required but voluntarily provided, those spaces must still comply with the standards for access, size, design, and other safety-related requirements in the parking ordinance. This is to ensure parking is developed in a way that is usable, promotes good circulation on site, and will not create hazards for those using the spaces. The proposed amendments were reviewed by the Environmental Planning Commission on September 18, 2024 at a public hearing, and was recommended for approval to the City Council. Prior to the EPC meeting, staff received 2 public comments on this item. One commenter supported the proposed amendments, while the other expressed concerns about the impacts to on-street parking if minimum parking requirements are eliminated. One additional member from the public expressed support of the proposed amendments at the EPC meeting. The proposed amendments to parking requirements are exempt from California Environmental Quality Act as per Section 15061 Common Sense Exemption. In conclusion, EPC recommends the City Council to introduce the ordinance amending Chapter 36 of the City Code and adopt the resolutions amending the Downtown Precise Plan, El Camino Real Precise Plan, San Antonio Precise Plan, and East Wisman Precise Plan. This concludes staff presentation. Staff, including Community Development Director Kristen Murdoch, is also present here tonight if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're now at the point where any member of the public joining us virtually or in person can provide comment. Can provide comment on this item. Actually, I'm going to bring it back to Council for questions and deliberation. Yeah, we do. Okay, public comment first. It says consent calendar. So if you are here in person, submit a blue card, and if you're here virtually, click the raise hand button in Zoom. I do not see any in-person speakers. So, but virtually, I see Bruce England.
Thank you. Bruce England, again, Westman Station Drive. I have a very short comment. This material is a little confusing, at least for me, but I just want to express that having adequate parking for bicycles is very important, and the formulas that we currently have at the city are based on the rules for vehicles. And so if those need to be adjusted at all to accommodate the changes, I hope that will be considered. Maybe the EV parking is fine as it is, but I honestly don't even know about that. But I'll just say that as a member of the community, I'm interested in having appropriate parking where we need it for both EVs and for bicycles. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I see no other speakers. So I'll now bring the item back for council questions and deliberation. This agenda item includes a proposal to eliminate minimum parking standards for residential development in the Downtown Precise Plan and requires several council members to recuse themselves due to conflicts of interest. Councilmember Abekoga, do you have a statement?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember. I am recusing myself from discussions about the elimination of minimum parking requirements for residential development in the Downtown Precise Plan area due to the proximity of my residence to the Downtown Precise Plan.
Okay, and I am also recusing myself from discussions about elimination of minimum parking requirements for residential development in the downtown Precise Plan area because of the proximity of my residence to the downtown Precise Plan.
The council will now ask questions, deliberate, and vote on whether to eliminate minimum parking requirements for residential development in the downtown Precise Plan area. I will note that a motion to approve the recommendation should also include reading the title of the resolution attached to the report. The city clerk will take a roll call vote as we have council members participating remotely this evening. Are there any questions? Councilmember Kamei.
Great, thank you. Just a quick question for staff. So I know that EV and ADA spaces are still required. And I wanted to follow up on emergency vehicle parking. So the red curbs or others, that will still remain unchanged, correct? Okay. And then just to follow up on the bike parking, bike parking would still be required as a condition of approval, or how might we handle the bike parking?
So the
Or
way
if it's case by case,
Thank you for the question. The way bike parking requirements are in our city code for residential developments, it is actually based on the number of units. The amendments that we are bringing forward tonight are for eliminating minimum parking requirements for residential uses. So those bike parking requirements will not change and will still remain.
Great, thank you for those clarifications.
I do think, though, and this was in the council question, the response is for non-residential parking, it is based on the number of proposed parking spaces. And, with the modifications that were enacted with AB 2097, that already has made a change that would potentially, require less bike parking spaces if a project proposes less parking spaces. But none of that is changed by the amendments tonight. That's already in practice.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, then a motion is in order. Councilmember Kamei.
Okay, I move that the council adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View amending the P19 Downtown Precise Plan to eliminate the minimum parking requirements for residential development consistent with Subtask B of Housing Element Program 1.2 and finding the amendment to be exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to CEQA guidelines, sections 15061B3, as recommended by the Environmental Planning Commission, to be read in title only, further reading waived.
Thank you, and I've seconded the motion. As the mayor is participating virtually this evening, all votes will be done by roll call. City Clerk Glazer, whenever you're ready.
Councilmember Vice Mayor Matichek has her hand raised.
Oh, thank you. Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, we went straight to a motion and sort of skipped comments. And I just wanted to add that I have concerns about this portion of the housing element. And while I understand that developers can still choose to provide parking, given the lack of really efficient, effective public transit in the Bay Area, there's a couple exceptions, Caltrain and BART, but it makes it very challenging for people to use public transit, and we're still dependent on automobiles. So while I hope developers will still propose parking, I can't support reducing or eliminating our minimum parking requirements. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Are there any other comments? If there are, and just to clarify, once our colleagues return, there will be a subsequent motion for the balance of the recommendations. Right now, just for the benefit of the public, we're only voting on the downtown portion. If there are no other questions or comments, I'm seeing no other hands up, then let's do the roll call.
Councilmember Kamei,
Yes.
Councilmember Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ramos,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matichak,
No.
Mayor Showalter.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Ramirez. Let's see. Okay, here we are. We're now at the point where the council will ask questions and deliberate on the remaining topics of discussion and then take action. Do any members of the council have further questions? Councilmember Abekoga.
Thank you, Councilmember Hicks. My question has to do with the car share requirements. If I read it right, that's also based on parking number or parking space numbers. But can we have car share requirements that are not based on parking requirements, just on unit count or something else? Because I guess I have some concerns I'll share later. I mean, the whole thing, but car share to me is a TDM measure. So it kind of goes against what we're trying to do here, and encouraging people to get out of SOVs. So is there a way that we can keep those or have some kind of requirements based on something else?
Thank you for the question. I will start, and maybe if then Assistant Community Development Director or Community Development Director would like to add. So as it stands right now, we just have the car share as a requirement in only one area in the city, that is in the East Wisman Precise Plan area. As far as the amendments that are being proposed tonight, they relate to just residential development. And those requirements are, again, based upon the number of units that are required. So in terms of the impact to car share requirements, there would be very minimal because of the amendments that we are saying tonight. Can we change that? That's outside the scope of the item that we are bringing tonight. But again, we will be looking at code amendments as we bring back our TDM ordinance later in fall of 2025. And maybe it could be discussed at that point of time.
Yeah, so I understand, I read the questions and answers, but I'm thinking actually beyond that, and how do we potentially increase car share requirements, or having more car share programs throughout the city? So doing this today, will this make that harder or not affect it at all? That's really my concern with this.
So I'll start. As I said, we are working on our TDM ordinance right now. We're looking at variety of measures that somebody can actually choose from. Car share is one of the tools that people can choose from, but we'll be looking at others as well. Definitely, when we will bring that toolbox for council and EPC consideration, it would be a discussion at that point of time if we want to, look at how we want to implement that, but also the fact that it is going to be a citywide requirement. Right now, where car share is just a requirement in East Wisman Precise Plan, people do have an option to use that as part of their TDM program in the new developments that come in, and a lot of developments actually look into that as well. So yeah.
And I'm sorry, when is the TDM policy coming?
It's scheduled for fall 2025 for adoption.
And this we have to do by, I forget, the 2025.
This one, it is for December 31st, 2024.
Oh, 24, okay, all right, thank you.
So I don't see other council member questions. Let me see if we have any virtual council member questions. Not that I see. I'm going to sort of re-ask a question that was asked while I was recused. So in terms of the EV and ADA requirements, that would be based on a percent. Am I understanding correctly that that would be based on a percentage of whatever the applicant or developer voluntarily proposed as in terms of parking?
For residential.
For residential,
correct.
Which is what we're looking at tonight. So it could, the idea is to reduce parking, so that would mean probably reduced ADA and electric vehicle charging. So is there a way that we could, I would prefer not to reduce either of those too much, but particularly electric vehicle, I would prefer not to reduce either of those too much. In particular, because I think it is we want people to get out of their cars and use electric cars. So I feel like we want to put more charging stations in, not fewer. Is there a way of doing that tonight?
I'm not sure there's a way of doing that tonight. So tonight we're eliminating those minimum parking requirements, and all of the percentages and the requirements from the building code and the REACH code come from what the percentage of the total number of parking spaces are. So you would have to use a different metric.
Well, couldn't we just take our previous requirements and just require that number of electric, say that number of electric vehicle? Just use, actually, a resident emailed us how that would turn out. It seems like something that would be doable, because I would personally prefer not to reduce the number of electric vehicle charging stations required.
Thank you. Good evening, honorable council members, Community Development Director Christian Murdoch. I think the simple answer is there are a variety of policy options that the council could consider. What staff has prepared is something that's focused on complying with the housing element program obligations. That's why you see the ordinance that's proposed before you. I've heard interest in varying degrees of different approaches or adjustments, car sharing, EV, ADA, et cetera, bicycle parking. All of them likely have policy solutions. I think the core issue that the housing element program was trying to address, and what complicates doing anything tonight, is addressing affordability of residential development. To provide any number of parking spaces or to increase requirements where a developer may choose to minimize or maybe in a remote case have no parking, has the potential to dramatically affect the costs, and we would want to study that carefully. And so engaging with housing developers, other interested parties to get more information about what having a singular sort of parking requirement might look like, recognizing that these developments are already providing, in the examples that we've cited, a lot of parking already, even when they're not required to provide it. So I don't think we're in a situation where we're very likely to have no parking provided and then thus no EV or ADA spaces. I think we are in a situation where fewer vehicles overall might lead to less driving, which would sort of address that component of getting people out of vehicles. And then secondarily, we could look at coming back through the TDM ordinance or with other zoning amendments in the course of the next year or so at what options to sort of make minor adjustments or ensure appropriate EV charging outcomes for the spaces that are provided.
So let me see if I understand you right. You're saying that although if we're reducing, we're allowing developers to reduce the amount of parking in their development, they will therefore also be able to reduce the number of ADA and EV charging spaces, but that we would be able to add those back in at some point in the future? Can you tell me a little more about how that would happen?
What I'm trying to say is it's hard to do anything tonight without studying it more carefully. What we have found through our data of projects that were not required to provide any parking still choose to provide parking, typically in very high proportion to what they would have been required to provide, absent AB 2097, for example. few, if any, of the examples that we've had in Mountain View provide little to no parking. So I think maybe the immediate concern is not as significant as it may be perceived to be based on the data we have for the projects that have come forward. What I was saying is that in future ordinance amendments, we can take a look at opportunities to provide greater shares of accessible parking among the spaces that are provided to try to offset and maybe try to achieve parity, if you will, of what would have been required if all of the spaces under the zoning were provided, but with fewer overall spaces, a higher proportion of EV or ADA. What we cannot do is, I think, offer you that policy option tonight because of the further study that would be required to achieve that. For example, providing ADA spaces requires very heightened design standards. And so doing that for a greater number of spaces may have significant construction cost impacts for residential projects, for example. So we would want to be thoughtful in studying that if the underlying intent of this housing element program is to address residential development costs and affordability.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I don't see other speakers, and we do have, so it's now time for comments, and I see, well, first I see a motion by Councilmember Kamei and a second by Councilmember Ramirez. And I also, so now that those are up there, do you want to say what your motion is?
Well, I was just asking, since we were bifurcating that if I had to remake the motion, or just the okay, so why don't I withdraw?
Oh.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to have you say what your motion is, and then, oh, well, we need a second. Oh, you have to say what it is first, and then you can get a second.
No problem. I'm going to move the staff recommendation, including introduce an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mountain View, amending Chapter 36 zoning of the City Code to implement subtask B of Housing Element Program 1.2, including updates to Section 36.32.50, required number of parking spaces to eliminate minimum parking requirements for residential developments in certain areas, making conforming and clarifying changes to other sections of Chapter 36 zoning, and finding the amendments to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15061B3, as recommended by the Environmental Planning Commission, to be read in title only, further reading waived, and set a second reading for December 10th, 2024, and adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View amending the P38 El Camino Real Precise Plan to eliminate the minimum parking requirements for residential development consistent with subtask B of Housing Element Program 1.2, and finding the amendment to be exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15061B3, as recommended by the Environmental Planning Commission, to be read in title only, further reading waived, and adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View amending the P40 San Antonio Precise Plan to eliminate the minimum parking requirements for residential development consistent with subtask B of Housing Element Program 1.2, and finding the amendment to be exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15061B3, as recommended by the Environmental Planning Commission, to be read in title only, further reading waived, and adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mountain View amending the P41 East Wisman Precise Plan to eliminate the minimum parking requirements for residential development consistent with subtask B of Housing Element Program 1.2, and finding the amendment to be exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15061B3, as recommended by the Environmental Planning Commission, to be read in title only, further reading waived.
Thank you. So there's the, so we have a motion and a second by Councilmember Kamei, and now we have a comment by Councilmember Abikoga.
Thank you, Councilmember. So as much as I understand and appreciate that this is part of the housing element, I find this, as the Vice Mayor mentioned, challenging, has many challenges, and I don't know if they're unintended or intended consequences, but I just don't think this is realistic at this time. And I say this time, especially the timing is interesting or important because this is, based on transit or proximity to transit. And we are, as you know, I'm on several transportation agencies and talking about a fiscal cliff that several agencies are facing in 2 years' time in 2026. And frankly, the state has bailed us out somewhat, but not completely. And so we are having to look at a regional measure, figuring out how to do this ourselves. But none of that is for certain. And so that's my question in 2026. If we're not able to continue to fund transit at current levels, let alone doing more, this just isn't going to work. And so I understand that we should, or, probably just go along with it. But as I've been watching this and being involved in a lot of these discussions, I do think it's important for us to make some statements to the state how this is just not feasible and not realistic. And frankly, I would like to say, look, unless you're going to guarantee transit funding so that we're not going to face a fiscal cliff, we can't do this. And so for that reason, it's a statement vote, I guess, but I cannot support this at this time. But, I think we really have to start, pushing back, I guess you can say, or just trying to make the state realize how this is just not going to work. And the state has to do its part in terms of funding transportation, funding affordable housing, if they really want to make these housing elements work out. Thanks.
So I see a comment by the mayor.
Yeah, mine's a different one. I think this has really been a good discussion about other aspects of minimum parking that we're concerned about. In particular, we heard that there seems to be a lot of interest in maintaining EV parking, rideshare parking, and ADA parking and bike parking. And the staff has said that there are kind of other ways to do that will be coming up in the future. So I just wondered, since this is agendized, can those concepts are they taken as direction to staff that we've discussed them, or kind of how will staff consider them moving forward?
Thank you, Mayor, for the question. I think we don't necessarily need direction on that point. I think what we've heard is an extensive amount of interest among the council to consider additional approaches that can balance the needs to make housing development affordable while also meeting other needs, environmental needs, traffic-related needs, accessible parking for disabled persons, et cetera. So we will take that feedback and in the course of our ongoing work, keep that in mind in terms of evaluating policy options and alternatives for the council in these upcoming efforts.
Thank you. That's excellent. I think it's really important.
Okay, so I'm going to make my comment, and then I'm going to let the motion maker make his additional comment, and other council members. Yeah, I have multiple concerns about this. Some of them are the ones the bike parking seems to be taken care of in terms of residential because of it's based on unit count. But I do have concerns, as reflected in my question, about EV charging in particular and ADA parking. But I also have a little bit of a concern in terms of general parking, because I think developers will be looking at our streets as potential parking places. And if there's not a lot of parking, there's a lot of open space available on the street, they'll reduce their parking based on that. So it kind of has the potential to give a gift to the first developer in the area, and then once the streets are all parked up and we can't convert them to wider sidewalks for walking or to bike lanes, then the next developer will think that they have to add parking. So I have concerns about the way this is rolling out. I do think we could use less parking than we currently require, but I'm not sure I want to go quite this far. And I agree with Councilmember Abakoga that transit is under threat right now. So saying we're basing our transportation on that is questionable to me. So I may abstain from this. Now, Councilmember Ramirez.
Thank you, Councilmember Hicks. So a few things. I would hope that at a minimum the council approves the staff recommendations because they are essential to compliance with the housing element, and I don't want to get the city into trouble by failing to advance one of the housing element programs so early on. But I think some things that may help, if not make more comfortable, at least mitigate some of the consternation that I think several folks have expressed. One is most of the area that's contemplated is already covered under state law, AB 2097. If you look at the maps, there's a substantial amount of overlap, and so we can't, even if we did nothing and we took no further action, we can't enforce minimum parking requirements in those areas anyway. And then I think something that might help folks feel, again, maybe not totally comfortable, but might bring might mitigate some of that impact is in San Jose, which eliminated parking minimum requirements citywide for all types of development. Some time ago, no developers have proposed any projects with zero parking. It's just not feasible. It's not what the market would tolerate right now, right? So for at a couple of levels, right? Many people who are seeking to, this is just residential only, so I'll just use that as an example, but for folks who are looking to rent or own, there is an expectation that there's some parking provided. And I think most developers want to be able to command the kinds of rents or ownership costs that you can when you meet the expectations of the market. The other thing is developers can't even secure financing to construct the project in the first place if they don't provide parking, because the folks who are doing the financing don't believe it's realistic at a market level either. So I appreciate the staff's response. I don't believe we will in practice see any projects with zero parking, which means that we will see the provision of EV spaces and ADA spaces for the foreseeable future. I don't see the market changing, anytime soon. So I don't think that in practice this will actually be an issue. The other thing is I don't want to provide additional or special or separate direction to staff at this time. I know you're overwhelmed with a large number of tasks, and going back and adding parking standards is not terribly interesting or compelling to me right now. But I think it's something that staff probably can consider or revisit when you come back to us with the TDM ordinance. I think it's a good opportunity to think about this at a more holistic level. And if we need to make some adjustments, that we can certainly consider it at that time. But I feel that that's a more appropriate way to assess the need for minimum standards, right? We're not saying you cannot provide parking. We're saying we have no parking minimum requirements in certain portions of the city, only for residential development. So I would encourage the council to support the staff recommendations. Thank you.
Councilmember Kamei.
Great, thank you. I wasn't sure if you were going to add in another comment. So I seconded the motion and appreciate the comments from Councilmember Ramirez. I find that it's critical that we adhere to our housing element, and it sounds like from the discussion we've had that there'll be opportunities to work with staff to address the issues that we've brought up. In addition to maybe incorporating into the TDM ordinance, one of the things I was thinking about was our active transportation plan and the goals that we have there, and how some of these areas are likely already in the active transportation plan and we can add more perhaps safeguards or more policies in these areas to help address these specific nodes without our city. So I just wanted to bring that up, and that's why I will also be supporting the motion. Thank you.
So, seeing no further comments, I think it's time for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Kamei,
Yes.
Councilmember Abe Koga,
Nay.
Councilmember Hicks,
Abstain.
Councilmember Ramos,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matichak,
No.
Mayor Showalter.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-2.
Okay, now we move on to, actually, first we're going to move backwards on the agenda to item 6.1, which is the public hearing on 2645 through 2655 Fayette Drive residential development. So although this item has been postponed to November 19th, members of the public can still provide public comment. So if you had wanted to provide a public comment on Fayette Drive, please submit a speaker card or raise your hand. I do not see anyone wanting to provide public comments, so we will move on again to item 7, which is unfinished business. 7.1 is CalPERS contract amendment for all unrepresented safety police managers and police manager employees ordinance. And this will be a second reading. Human Resources Director Maxine Gullo will present the item. And if you'd like to speak on this item in person, please submit a blue speaker card to the city clerk now.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm returning on behalf of Human Resources for the third and final council action to meet CalPERS requirements and amend the cost share for unrepresented police managers. This action will adopt the final ordinance. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members of the council have questions? I don't see any questions. And would any member of the public on the line like to provide a comment on this item? I don't see any raised hands. No one in person. So now I'll bring the item back for council deliberation and action. And note that a motion to approve the recommendation should also include reading the title of the ordinance attached to the report. The city clerk will take a roll call vote as we have council members participating remotely this evening. I see a motion by council member Abe Koga. Do I have a second? Do you want to read it?
I can read it. You want me to?
Okay, now we have a second. By Councilmember Kamei. So would you like to read the motion that you are making?
Yes. I would like to make a motion to adopt an ordinance of the City of Mountain View authorizing an amendment to the contract between the City Council of the City of Mountain View and the Board of Administration of the California Public Employees Retirement System to be read in title only, further reading waived.
Okay, now we will have a roll call vote.
Councilmember Abe Koga,
Aye.
Councilmember Kamei,
Yes.
Councilmember Hicks,
Yes.
Councilmember Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ramos,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matichak,
Yes.
Mayor Showalter.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to items 8, new business. 8.1 is amendment to the transient occupancy tax ordinance. Finance and Administrative Services Director Derek Rampone and Senior Assistant City Attorney Mitesh Bhakta will present the item. If you'd like to speak on this item in person, please submit a blue speaker card to the city clerk now. And do we have a staff presentation?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Just pull this up. All right, good evening, Mayor Showalter, Vice Mayor Matichak, and council members. Derek Rampone, your Finance and Administrative Services Director, and I'm joined tonight by Senior Assistant City Attorney, Mitesh Bhakta. The item before you tonight is to introduce an ordinance that amends Chapter 33 of the Mountain View City Code, which will strengthen the city's ability to collect delinquent and unpaid transient occupancy tax. This tax is remitted to the city on a quarterly basis by operators throughout the city. This is the first reading of the ordinance, and the second reading is set for December 10th. I just wanted to note that the last update to Chapter 33 of the city's code was in July of 1991 when the city updated the amount of the tax to 10%. The key amendments of this to the city code are really allowing the city to record a certificate of lien on a property in the amount of the outstanding TOT and any delinquent penalties and interest. And then once the lien is recorded, the city can then obtain a court order for enforcement and collection without the need for litigation, which can be lengthy and costly to the city. Another aspect of one of the amendments is to the city will also have the ability now to issue a tax clearance certificate, which will provide confirmation that outstanding tax is either due or none is outstanding for any transferees or any purchasers of any hotels or motels or inns. This will also, the city will also, as an alternative to a court order, be able to collect the delinquent amount by seizing and selling delinquent operators' property to satisfy the lien. And will also now be able to impose the TOT liability onto any successor owner, which will be consistent with state law and as a result of the issuance of the tax clearance certificate. And here's the recommendation for the item, and that concludes our presentation. We're available for any questions.
Thank you. So do council members have questions? I do not see any questions. So now any member of the public, either virtually or in person. If you're in person, submit a card. If you're virtual, raise your hand. I do not see any public speakers on this item, so I'll bring the item back for council deliberation and action. And note that a motion to approve the recommendation should also include reading the title of the ordinance attached to the report. Okay, I see a motion by Councilmember Abekoga and a second by Councilmember Kamei. And this, Councilmember Abekoga, would you like to read your motion?
Thank you, Councilmember. Yes, I'd like to make a motion to introduce an ordinance of the City of Mountain View amending Chapter 33 of the Mountain View City Code to add additional efficient mechanisms for collection of transient occupancy tax, to be read in title only, further reading waived, and set a second reading for December 10th, 2024.
Okay, we will now deliberate on that, and I see that the Vice Mayor has a comment or a question.
Yeah, sorry, I did have a question. It took me a little bit to raise my hand there. I sent in quite a few questions about what types of properties this applies to. And I also had a discussion with our city attorney about this. And I guess I just want to clarify for everyone that, and correct me if I don't have the correct understanding, that because of the definition of hotels, is it Chapter 33, that this does apply to short-term rentals that are done on platforms like Airbnb or VRBO. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, Vice Mayor. And just to clarify for everyone, this would apply, the transient occupancy tax is applicable to short-term rentals under the short-term rental ordinance, which separately requires all short-term rental operators to pay TOT to the city. So that is an independent requirement of the short-term rental ordinance. And because this only modifies the transient occupancy tax ordinance, any new requirements imposed on hotel operators automatically flow through to short-term rental operators as well.
Okay, thank you.
So do council members have other questions or comments? I don't see any more, so the city clerk will now take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Abe-Koga?
Aye.
Councilmember Kamei?
Yes.
Councilmember Hicks?
Yes.
Councilmember Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilmember Ramos?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matichak?
Yes.
Mayor Showalter?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so now we move on to item 9, which is council staff committee reports. Do we have any reports? Councilmember Ramirez.
Thank you, Councilmember Hicks. I want to express my appreciation to the Mountain View voters who approved Measure G last Tuesday, and also to the staff who helped put together that measure, and my colleagues on the Council Finance Committee who worked with the staff early on to develop the revenue measure, and then also to the full council who unanimously supported placing that measure on the ballot. And I'm very excited to begin the hard work of investing that money and delivering many of the priorities and the objectives that we've committed to our community. Thank you.
I second that. Councilmember Abe-Koga.
Thank you, Councilmember. I just wanted to report out that at our Caltrain board meeting last week, I brought up under board requests that we look at the cost of grade separation projects. I was, city staff informed me that our Rangsdorf project has increased in cost by almost another $100 million, and we were very close to closing the gap that we had prior, including having a couple of grant applications into the federal government. And this now with the increase, that puts any grant applications in jeopardy because they require us to be fully funded otherwise. And so when I talked with VTA staff, and they have offered to take a second look at the project and the costs and do an analysis. And then I did ask our Caltrain board to also bring it back for a deep dive discussion at the board level on, frankly, not just ours, but all of these grade separation projects, because we've seen the increase in there's a Burlingame project that also was almost complete and got pulled because its costs increased. And it's just becoming untenable if these continue. So that will happen at some point in the new year, and I will be on it. And I won't be here, but I will definitely keep staff apprised of what we discuss, and we hopefully can find ways to make it more efficient and less costly. And so I will just keep you all posted on what gets discussed. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Kamei.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Hicks. I have 2 things I'd like to report on. The first is on the 29th, we had the Pacific Clinics open house, and we saw the track item on consent. Just wanted to take a point to thank in the audience. We have our Assistant City Manager, Audrey Ramberg, who has been instrumental as we have wound down the JPA, and per the staff report is going to be the administrative delegate to the unwinding over the next 2 years, and just want to thank her for all her help with this heavy lift as we have transitioned CHAC to Pacific Clinics. Also on the same day, very popular, was our CTC meeting, our Council Transportation Committee meeting. We discussed the personal delivery device program and updating that. We also had a neighborhood traffic management program program application for Wasatch Drive. You may have heard about it. It was about closing it to vehicular traffic. And then, as was just mentioned, we talked about Castro Street and the Rangsdorf grade separation projects, as well as the active transportation plan and transportation demand management ordinance, which will be coming. It's going to look like a busy CTC year. So thanks. Oh, in 2025. Thanks.
Thank you. Now I'm going to take virtual council members and mayors and so forth. I'm going to take you from left to right. I don't know what order you raised your hands in. So, Councilmember Ramos.
Thank you, Councilmember Hicks. I wanted to report out. I don't know who does the report out for the NOFA committee, because we met that since the last council meeting, or if there's even a report out for that. But I did want to report on last Friday. I attended a press conference that was run essentially in partnerships with a number of nonprofits, the county, and I believe the city of San Jose. I spoke on behalf of the, I guess they were calling them the smaller cities. They had a number of speakers from the county, from some nonprofits, and from the city of San Jose, and they felt it was important to include the voices of the non-San Jose cities in our county. There have been, obviously, with the last election, there have been some concern in the community about actions that could take place against certain populations, like our immigrant community, our LGBTQ plus community, our communities of color. And so this press conference was more of a stand in solidarity, and that our cities and our county is committed to ensuring that these communities will remain protected regardless of what will come out of the what will come out of this next presidential administration, and reiterating how Mountain View is a community for all. So that was great. I believe Councilmember Ramirez and Councilmember Abekoga were also in attendance of that press conference. It was a good one. And that is all I have to report.
Thank you. Now the mayor.
Yes, I have a couple things I'd like to report too. On October 23rd, so the day after our last meeting, we convened a meeting on sea level rise protection for Santa Clara County elected officials from all of the shoreline cities here. And I was really very pleased that there were representatives from all of the cities and NASA. So the purpose of this meeting was really to bring everybody together to share the story of what is being done to protect us all from sea level rise locally. And we had 3 or 4 presentations to share that information. John Bourgeois from Valley Water talked about what is being done in Alviso and most of the San Jose area, and also the Phase 2 project with the Corps of Engineers that was recently sent a letter saying it didn't pencil out and they're not going forward with it for the next 2 decades. Then our Raymond Wong gave a presentation about what's happening in Mountain View, and Julie Weiss from Palo Alto gave a presentation about what's happening in Palo Alto. And then BCDC staff, they gave a presentation on the draft guidelines for regional shoreline adaptation plans that need to be finalized by the end of this calendar year. And it's going to require that every city or county prepare a sea level rise protection plan. And we can do this individually as cities, or we can do it in a multi-jurisdictional fashion. So this was an opportunity to bring the people from elected officials from all the cities that are involved in Santa Clara County together to talk about that. We also had a presentation from the county. They are doing a great deal of work on climate resilience. And they're doing it on a very comprehensive level, not just sea level rise. They're talking about heat issues, inland flooding, biodiversity issues, all sorts of things. So after some discussion, we agreed to send our staffs back to give us a recommendation about how we should move forward on the development of the regional adaptation plans. And the staff that were there thought that it would probably be good to reconvene in 4 to 6 months. So I will keep you abreast of that as time goes on. But I really want to thank the particularly Lisa Al and Raymond Wong. There were a number of other people, Rebecca Lucky of our staff, who really helped to put this meeting together. It was a good one. And then I wanted to share that I've gone on a couple of business visits, and one of them I went to last week was, the week before last was Whisk, and they are developing autonomous flying taxis. So they literally have small planes that they think will that they are making to function as taxis, not taxis to go from sort of your house to a restaurant, but taxis to go more, on the order of 20 to 50 miles. So for instance, if you wanted to go to the airport and go to the airport from your house, you could conceivably take one of these from one airport to another. So that was pretty interesting. But the most momentous thing, besides the press release the press conference that Emily just talked about, that I really wanted to share with you, you were all there, but I want to make sure that we get it in the minutes. We had ribbon cuttings for 2 affordable housing projects 2 days in a row. I mean, that's never happened before in my 25 years of working on affordable housing, and it was just wonderful. One of them was the teacher housing project that we're doing in coordination with the Mountain View Wisman School District, and I think all of us were there. And then the other one was the following day, the Crestview Hotel, which is now called the Heartwood, and it is almost all leased out. And part of the group that it's oriented toward is youth that have aged out of foster care. They have a very, very high percentage of becoming homeless in those first few years out of foster care. So this is to help work on that. So for me, it was really wonderful to have all of our work or have our work on affordable housing kind of highlighted like that. I mean, we should feel very good. We should be very, very good about these 2 accomplishments. So I think that wraps it up for me. I've gone to all sorts of other things, but they weren't necessarily paid for by the city, so I won't take time, but it's been a very, very busy period. And I too want to sort of thank Councilmember Ramirez for the lead he took in getting Measure G across the finish line, because he actually put together the campaign. And we all know that you just can't get anything passed without a campaign. So I really appreciate all the work you did to make that happen. So thank you. That's my report.
Thank you. Now we have the Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I have a couple of things to report on. First, along with some of my colleagues, I attended the NASA Ames Luncheon in recognition of Congresswoman Eshoo. That was on October 29th. And this was specific to thank and recognize her for all of her efforts that she's done on behalf of the different organizations who are at Moffett Field. It was really nice. I was very touched by the things they had to say about her. I also, as Councilmember Kamei mentioned, participated in the Council Transportation Committee meeting on October 29th. And one of the items will be coming to council, and that's closing. And I just want to clarify, it's the intersection of Derricks and Wasatch that would be closed to vehicle traffic, not all of Wasatch. And then I also participated in the Navy Moffett Field Restoration Advisory Board meeting, and that was held on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Kamei, do you have another comment or no? Okay. Thought you had further comment. In that case, we're going to item 10, which is closed session report. City Attorney Logue, do you have a closed session report?
Thank you. No, there's no closed session report this evening.
Then we will move on to item number 11, adjournment. The next City Council meeting will be held on November 19th, and this meeting is adjourned at 8:19.